Hi, my name is Wilson. I'm doing this video because many years ago I was doing some of my personal research on the LHC. Um, it's really strange. There's a whole bunch of other parallel lines to the LHC. It's difficult to touch on all of them. If you just think about the movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger played the Terminator, and there was a second Terminator going after him and those people. They were down in some place, and the the female Terminator gets stuck to this large magnet-like thing, and and she has a little blade that comes out and cuts into it. That place that she was in was the Large Hadron Collider. So it's actually showed up in a few movies. There was a lot of ritual stuff with that machine, yes, and a lot of people were in an uproar about it. Blah 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 blah. I was researching that and a few other things, and the whole flat Earth concept came up. I researched that for a good while. Um, this is not going to be about that. Yeah, I don't. I absolutely don't want to make it about that. It's about gravity. What is gravity? People keep getting asked that question in this whole argument. Nobody ever displays um, an actual answer. They just say things like buoyancy and density. They say about motion, and you know those models don't actually work. You can't produce those models as an experiment. In any case, it won't happen. You can't do it. So how do we how do we know what gravity is? We have to go to real understanding and see something real to show us. Mathematically, um, you will never be able to explain to any human being because the equation is massive. And in my opinion, it's a lie. It's a bunch of nonsense. It really is. Okay, so how do we know this? We don't have to talk about that. That's just stupid. And nothing I'm going to say will make very many people, smart or otherwise, believe what I would say about that. So I'm going to describe what I think gravity is. Has anybody ever seen the acoustic levitation machine? If you haven't, there is a machine that uses a buffer pattern, or a device. Let's just say device, it'd just be easier. That um, that shoots a frequency and continues to shoot a frequency, a vibration, sound pattern, and it hits off another object and bounces back. So it's doing this in this motion, and it hits an area dead center where something can actually levitate in that area from the field. Now they use black ice to show you what it looks like, and they use small objects like water and whatever to show you how it can be held there. One of the things is that the water goes into the shape of a ball, so that can make the whole globe thing fit. Um, so I'm not. This isn't in no way to prove Earth is not flat. This is no way to prove that Earth is actually a globe. It's just to show that there is another model. So, and the model that would be true to form has proof on Earth. So, but I'm welcoming, not anger or not hate or anything like that. I'm welcoming somebody to go and do the same thing that I did, and find a way of explaining the things that you say that are proper, that are not from some kind of a video that somebody made of, and actual discussion, and be able to explain this thing, because you can a visual picture can fool people's minds. I can say something, and like you can either critique it and try to understand it, and in your own way make it yours. But this is my theory. So anyway, the acoustic levitation. So that's sound. A sound frequency can levitate an object. So we know that that is possible. Also, we know what sound can do as it passes through water, that it will create a reaction. And I believe it was sound, a sound vibration, and it was like it was a ball of water, and the light passed through, or whatever passed through, and it created this little light that expanded, and around it, for a brief moment, you would see what would happen to the water. Anyway, okay. So you say, how does this have anything to do with gravity? The sun is a fission reaction, an explosion. So if that's the case, and it's doing what it's doing, and if from the diameter, the radius, the circumference of the sun, if it's dissipating from that, coming out the rays, these sound waves, then it can levitate any objects near it. As a matter of fact, any objects moving within space to hit that area would be caught in the field and held there. Right? Okay. So a spin would make sense, but not much of a spin. Because I know other people who look into the sun and they notice that the sun doesn't actually spin all the way around. What we see from so-called satellites is an enhanced image. Anyway, so what you would need for the buffer pattern then would be all those other so-called suns would have to be doing the same thing. And it expands technically in every direction, but the strength of the expansion is from the equator. Now, I'm using this just to make sense of the way it works. And if this is the way it works, then this is the patterns in which it's going to work with. So these fields are holding the planets, and the planets are passively moving around the field like a record. And that would insist about the spin, the jerk motion. As it does this, it would spray off and cause a motion just enough so that things will turn. If it would pick up momentum, if it was spinning, it would pick up momentum because there's nothing to stop it. That's like when people talk, when you're told, okay, the gravity thing of Earth, and the Earth has gravity on its own. When you're taught that and the Earth is spinning, there's nothing to slow it down. The passive buffer pattern and the movement of the sun would, like, when you think about how that works, and if you know a little bit about mathematics, it doesn't have to be a lot, that objects, once in motion, anyway, I'm not gonna, something. Let's just stay on topic. I have trouble with that because I have ADHD and I suffer with the Asperger's. But anyway, so you have the buffer field, and all the planets can lay within the field, and they'll move with the field, right? Because they're not as strong, and if they're, space is considered the same as like a vacuum, then there's no resistance. There's no such thing as weight of a planet. Like, that's not actually a real thing for the planet then in space. It is for us because we're affected by the objects and by the gravity field itself. So we have solidity, and we have and it's like the vomit rockets. People think that it's it's 0 G. It's not actual 0 G. You're in a state of free fall, And as you're in a state of free fall and you're like wobbling around, then there's no place for you to fall to except for within the plane. So that large distance is not something you'd have to worry about. So it seems like you're actually, but once the plane levels off and stops its falling, then you just go and you're on the floor. Done. And people make it out to be anyway. So again, see, right? I get off topic and it's difficult, but I want to explain certain things. And I want people to understand that these are fallacies which are creating belief. All right. So we have our buffer field. It doesn't weigh anything out there, and like if it's doing that, if it's moving around, and then all the other planets are doing that, then yeah, the frequency would have to be strongest in a certain area. So you see like Mars, and you see the ones that are closer to the pattern are different. They're condensed. They're different. So the one where we're to, it's not so condensed. And if the heat, something that would be considered the same as heat, were hitting these other things, then it would drive whatever moisture and water that was in the objects within the pattern start to go away. There is a Goldilocks area. Well, they call it the Goldilocks area, the just right area, where the pattern starts to go back towards, and it's coming out to this other. Now, the pattern on the very outside, and if you take a look at Pluto and how Pluto is, the water and all that stuff and all the ice and all that is far away from the planet because there's less resistance from the pattern as you move away from it. These things literally make sense in the world because you can explain them. You don't need to do a bunch of math to explain them. And people like Neil deGrasse, people who have degrees, are being very, very foolish and childish if they're only going to adhere to these things. If you can't say, well, maybe it's true, maybe I made a mistake, but I'm smart enough to find a new avenue. Maybe Einstein was wrong. It didn't say that Einstein was intelligent. Like, he was super intelligent. But everybody can make a mistake. To say that his idea was adamant, I'm not saying that mine is 100%, but my theory should go out there in the world and people should be like, because I'm not a dummy and I'm not a guy that's going to sit there and just make things up out of my mind. Like, it's based on information that I could see. It's not based on any kind of a fallacy. And what I mean when I say that, and what I think that means, is that if you see something in action and it appears to be what you think it is, if you apply it to other things like the vomit rocket, as it goes down and we watch it and say, oh yeah, that's 0G, the gravity, yeah, and they're like, no, wait a minute. Gravity isn't something that a plane can change by moving. You're free falling a short distance, but the plane is free falling a large distance. You're still falling, say, 1,000 feet, 3,000, 5,000 feet, but inside the plane. So you are in a state of free fall. As the plane starts to drop, it's in a fall mode. As it flies along, it's in an arrest mode where this motion is constant. If the plane went dip down a bit, you would come up off the seat a bit. So as it goes down in that motion towards the Earth, you have to think then all of these fields. If Earth is then a ball, then you have to think of these fields pushing against all the outside of the Earth. That's creating a resistance. It's pushing against it, but like I said, it's passive enough that it can pass through objects, pass around objects without disturbing them very much. This would create a motion on all sides that's pressing against things, and yeah, you can react in it, you can move in it, you can act with other objects. Now, the Earth one is an idea that's based on the spin creating the motion. Now, if it's creating that much force in its spin that it's crushing everything to its center, then that force would be ever present and expanding, getting stronger. It would not be a passive field. It would create high amounts of resistance. It would crush you to the earth. It would not know the difference between an elephant or a bird or a drop of water, because it would be this is one job it does. So Neil deGrasse Tyson says that the earth got chubbier because of its spin, and a flat earther says that why didn't the water do that? Well, that's a good question. The water didn't go to the center and the earth crush into the center. It wouldn't do that in that, like, they're right, like the water would be up there and it would be like oceans that are really high, and like we would, when we think about these things, we'd be like, earth would have like almost like a ring going around it. It would have to be an influence that can do this job without being destructive at the same time, right? So we as a people would be like, well, how come you don't feel this and don't feel this? You do. I'm taking care of my landlord's nephew. He's having a panic attack. Anyway, I'm going to end this stream. I really sincerely hope that people will just give this a little bit of thought. Don't be angry that my beliefs are different than yours. Don't be upset about, whether or not I'm going against the grain. Just give it a thought, and I welcome criticism, questions, as long as it's constructive, nonviolent, and you just give it some thought. I'm putting something out there in the world for people to like just take a look at it, think about it, give it a thought. I spoke to the groups years ago when I was back, even like a little while after I was studying the LHC and the things with that. I'm not a flat earther. I'm not a glober. I started saying after that I'm I research. I'm a researcher. I'm not an astronaut or anything like that of the sort. Therefore, I don't have any desire to go out into whatever it is or do any of those things. It doesn't matter to me. It's completely superfluous to my life. It will not change anything. I put this one out there because I really do feel like this is a better model. It's more probable than the imaginary, creation of something because of the object. Like, this is not true. You can think, oh well, you're moving in a car, blah blah blah. It's resistance that you feel. There's no gravity as you put your hand out the door that's creating. It's the resistance of the moisture that is around us from the water. It's how we live and breathe. We are water creatures. All things on earth are water creatures. Birds fly through it because of the air being like water, only, their feathers. I mean, fish, when they're swimming through, their bodies are designed to move through that because it's a thicker. Like, you have to think about these. No, it's too hard to explain these concepts. Yes, somebody will say, well, air is gas, you idiot. I'm not saying that it's not. I'm saying gas is just another word for a different form of liquid, water. And there's all kinds of forms of it. Down deep within the ocean, there is a super saline solution that you can't even penetrate. Like, you can't go through it, into it. You probably would, like, you probably can get, like, something if it was dense enough, like shoot it through like steel, like, I mean, we can dig through rock if we wanted to, but you can't swim in it. The submarine couldn't go down into it because it was too dense. And that we know that if you take a high saline solution and we put it into a container, that it will float a human body, you will become extremely buoyant because it's much, much heavier. It's much, much dense than your body. That's what happens. The particles. And anyway, I'm doing it again. The fact is that that these things are real things in the world. That people didn't know how to understand or describe a long time ago because of whatever catastrophe that happened. And I looked into a lot of different things. I still honestly believe that the whole Dark Ages era was very strange. But I mean, I digress. Let's just keep it to the gravity thing. Enjoy the video. If you you don't like it, like whatever, it doesn't really matter. Goodbye.